So welcome back again to the second part of Sacred Space. My name is John Keeley, still joined by Shane Ambrose on the other end of the Skype line. And again, it's a delight for us to welcome back again onto the programme. First of all, Martina and Lehane Sheehan, and this time with her husband, Pat Sheehan. Good morning to you.
Hello, John. How are things?
Good morning to you both.
Thanks a lot for joining us this morning. At this time...
Good to be connected in at these uncertain times.
And these uncertain times. And very important to share and to be together and support each other as best we can. And that's why we invited you guys on this morning, maybe to share something with us that might relate to these uncertain times, but also maybe relate to the liturgical time of the year when, as you said before, we're between Easter and Pentecost. And I believe you're going to centre a little reflection for us around, I think you've entitled it, Watching the Signs of the Spirit.
Yeah, listening for the Spirit and aligning ourselves with the movements of the Spirit in our lives.
Okay, listen, thank you very much indeed. We're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, we never thought we'd find it in 2020, I suppose, journeying towards Pentecost in circumstances such as these. And yes, these are the only times we have. We can't look back at the moment. We can't look forward. We just have to be in this unusual time and try and enter into it and to listen for promptings of the Spirit. And I suppose, things that we thought were dependable, things in our world that we thought were permanent and dependable have kind of crumbled a bit, and the carpet has been pulled from under us in so many ways. And I think the invitation might be there to just really land into this space and listen deeply together to see what's the Spirit doing and where is the Spirit stirring for us. So the couple of lines of the Gospel there that we're reflecting on, John 14, 15 to 21. And we're told, and I won't read the whole Gospel other than to just talk about a couple of lines in it. And, there's a reference to, I shall ask the Father, and he will give you another Paraclete to be with you forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world can never accept, since it neither sees nor knows him. But you know him, because he is with you. He is in you. And there's something very powerful there, that the Spirit, we are told, is not just with us, but the Spirit is in us. And, this indwelling Spirit. And I think we haven't been formed and shaped enough to really know and reflect that, and if we did really know it, how different maybe even this time of uncertainty would be. If we really knew that the Spirit is in us, in this in-between time when so much had crumbled and so much isn't dependable right now. So maybe we could start even just by, becoming aware of what the Gospel is saying around that the Spirit is in us. And we're told the Spirit dwells within us and brings us a peace that in other Gospels we're told, Jesus says, it's a peace the world cannot give. So even all those things that we thought were life itself, our diaries and our planning and our structures, and we had our diaries full for the year, didn't we, Pat? And now they're empty.
Yeah.
And
so it wasn't a very good investment to buy a 2020 diary.
And so those things that we thought were permanent, but we are told that the Spirit brings a peace that those things can't bring, that the world can't bring. So even if we were to take a moment, to think about what it would be like if we really trusted that indwelling Spirit, we would be set free from a lot of our anxieties. And I think we would really feel more at home in our own skin, be at home in ourselves, without so much competition or pushing or comparison or that exhausting drive that we've all been living from. We have been exhausted because we've been living in a culture of bigger, better, faster, and so on. We've been living in a culture of breaking speed limits. And at some level, that's all been stripped from us. And maybe it is a good time to sit in and to really become rooted in that spirit, in the core of our being. And when we trust the core of our being, we recognize that, we have enough.
We are enough.
Yes, we are enough, even more importantly. And when we believe we are enough, we don't need to compete or to perform. So I'm going to just call out a few lines, just a very short little poem that I wrote there at the beginning of lockdown. And the few lines are just called Fit In. So we might just sit in for a moment and let those few lines help us to become still. Sit in. Give up this sitting at life's edge, this begging, earning, proving to belong. Sit in full now. See how life supports you. But not with the things you bargained for. Sit in, empty of those lists and plans, all made in desperation. The busyness, the chains you wound around your soul that squeezed you in behind the lie that they would keep you from uncertainty. Sit in. Breathe in until another voice emerges and calls your name, though faint at first, until shaky like a newborn. An awkward step, and then another. While still unsure, you stumble towards a way of life that begins to feel a lot like coming home. So those few lines, sit in, might help us, even in this reflection, to think about how the Spirit might indeed be offering an opportunity here to step off the treadmill of our frantic lives and the way they have been. So the gospel tells us we will not be left as orphans. We will not be forgotten. We're carried, we're held. So there's a couple of lines in that gospel that have always bothered me. And it says something like, if you keep my commandments. And I've always felt a bit disturbed by that word, if. I remember in the past thinking, oh God, not another conditional promise that we have to be good to be loved, or we have to do the right things to be loved. And actually, it's not that at all. The deeper we've kind of gone into it. It says, if you obey my commandments, the Father will come to you, and so on. And it's actually not a condition. It's something like, that there's this spirit that's indwelling in us. It's like a law of life.
A law for life and to bring life.
Yes. Mm.
And we all, I suppose, we all know we have parts of us that turn away from life.
Yeah.
And then we don't grow.
Then we don't
grow.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like if you go to Florence to see the sunflowers. When the sun rises every morning, the sunflowers are in a position and they face the sun, they turn towards the sun. And as the sun tracks across the sky during the day, the sunflowers follow that track of the sun because they know instinctively somewhere inside them that this is where they get their life from. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, like all of us, you will have some sunflowers who don't face the sun. And they're the ones that never thrive. Mm-hmm. You know, they're weak. And the farmer comes along and he says, okay, let's take the sunflowers that are healthy and use them, and the other ones, look, we feed the cattle with them.
So what you're saying is that this law of life is written into nature as well, to turn towards life, to turn towards the light. But there's another pull in all of us, and it's in St. Paul says, you know, what is this inside me is that I do the things I don't want to do, and I end up not doing the things I want to do. But he recognized there was another law pulling him into sabotage and destruction and not following the way of the Spirit. So here the gospel says, if you obey, in other words, like we need to align ourselves with the Spirit, because we can turn away from it as well, and we can kind of feed ourselves with all sorts of things that don't bring life at all. And we have habits like that, especially in the mind, you know, that Jesus is saying, peace I give you. I'm offering this peace to your heart. But I know I do things that rob peace in my life.
Well, yeah, there are a number of things that can rob that peace. Rumination.
Will you explain rumination, please?
Rumination is like going back over something that we did, and maybe criticize yourself and saying, if only I said this, if only I didn't say this. So it keeps us in the past, and it keeps robbing us of the peace in the present. Mm-hmm. And then that's known as rumination. Yes. Then we have another little thing that we do, that our brain does. It's called anticipatory anxiety. And what that is jumping into the future and anticipating things that could go wrong.
And it's a bit like, you know, when you go upstairs and you're up at the top step of the stairs and you have no idea what you're there for. It's one of those things, isn't it? Because your mind has gone ahead. You're not there. You're not present.
You're not present in the moment. Mm-hmm. And it robs itself of that magic time, present moment. Mm-hmm. And of course, social comparisons then is another one that we all fall victim to. And social comparisons is looking at the other people around us and thinking they have a better life than us.
Yeah.
And this is very, I suppose, prevalent now in social media, where we see people on social media and we see that they're having such a great time, you know.
Yeah.
So this is what's presented to us.
Yeah. So there are the three biggies, really, aren't there? Rumination, which is going back over and over and over and over the past. Anticipatory anxiety, which is worrying about the future. And social comparisons, which is negatively comparing ourselves to others. Mm-hmm. And we lose peace when we go down those roads. Mm-hmm. And of course there are others. There are many other kind of sabotage things that we do. But there are three very significant ones. And so the aligning ourselves with the Spirit is something about, you know, being really present in the moment. Mm-hmm. And there are other ones, aren't there, you know, that help us to be aligned to the Spirit.
Yes, I suppose counting our blessings is important.
Yeah, and we're really aware of
living fully in the present moment, fostering social connections and communities, practicing the faith that gives us meaning, and engagement in what contributes to the common good.
And there's some of the things that kind of nourish the Spirit, aren't they? Yeah. That kind of help us to grow. Yeah. So when the gospel says, you know, if you obey me, so I suppose what it's saying is, you know, we need certain practices and habits to help us you know what the word obey, actually, obedience is actually a Latin word, and it actually means pay attention, listen. So obey doesn't mean do what you're told. It means pay attention. If you pay attention to the Spirit, that's very different, isn't it, to do what you're told.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the Spirit.
Yeah.
So there are certain things we can build into our lives to help us pay attention to the Spirit, that help us nourish the Spirit. And you've named some of them there, Pat, already there.
And I think, like, psychology will tell us that, in fact, it tells us no matter what we own or achieve, and that can only contribute about 10% to our levels of happiness and life satisfaction.
Mm. And, you know, people are really discovering that now in this time of lockdown. We've heard, you know, we both do counselling, and we can't do face-to-face counselling now, but we do Zoom counselling and spiritual direction. And so many people have said to us that now that they have no shocks to go through, that they have discovered that they need a lot less than they thought they needed, and they're content with a lot less. And so it does prove, you know, what you said, that no matter what we own or achieve, it can only contribute to about 10% to our happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is, do you remember one day a gardener came into our garden, and he said that there's a rose out the front, and he said, you know, it's not growing at all. It's not thriving. And he said a few things. He said
it needs a bit of pot.
Yeah.
It needs manure.
Yeah.
Plenty of that around here.
Yeah.
And it needs a trellis for support.
Yeah. And a trellis is like a support structure, that the trellis wasn't there to oppress the rose or to block it in any way, but to support the rose to grow towards the light. And because of what the gardener, we never employed him after, actually, that day he was too expensive. But the one thing we did take away was that we all need a trellis. And in fact, out of that, I wrote a book called A Trellis for the Soul. It was supposed to come out in March, but it's not going to be coming now until September, I think. But the reason I started writing about A Trellis for the Soul is that there are practices that we need to support us. And I think one of them is, there are a good few of them, but we'll pick two just for today. And one of them is prayer, and the other is gratitude. So maybe to look at prayer for a minute. So prayer isn't so much a kind of a climbing up. You know, sometimes we think resurrection is about going up. But prayer is more like a resting down into God. Resting down into the core of our being, where the Spirit of God dwells. And resting there, deeply resting there, and letting some of the scaffolding fall away, as it is falling away. You know, those worries we have about what people think of us, public opinion, worrying about tomorrow. And instead, if we do this regularly, resting in the Spirit, we can become inwardly directed by the Spirit. We're guided by it. But more important, we're nourished, and we discover who we are.
And whose we are.
And whose we are. So prayer, real prayer, isn't about give me this, give me that. If I do this, will you do that? It's not that. It's about resting deeply in the presence of God and recognizing that no matter what we lose and what externals we lose, that there is this promise inside. You know, Jesus never said we'll have a perfect life, but he did say, I will be with you always. I will not leave you orphaned, it says in this gospel. And the poet Emily Dickinson says that hope is a thing with feathers that rests in the heart. So the Spirit is like a thing with feathers that rests in the heart. It's indwelling, and it fills us with life if we align ourselves with it. So the second practice that we might just reflect on briefly this morning is the practice of gratitude. And it's almost impossible to be depressed and grateful at the same time. It really protects us from depression. Gratitude for all the small little miracles.
small little miracles. And I think of Moses in the Old Testament, minding the sheep on the desert, and something in him turned towards the mountain. And it invited him, the mountain invited him to go and see this wonderful sight, as it says. There was a wonderful sight. And he encountered the burning bush. And in that place, he encountered God.
Yeah.
So that spirit inside him turned him towards the mountain, called him towards the mountain.
And gratitude is that. It's about turning towards the burning bushes, turning towards the blessings. And, these days, the new growth around us, bird song can be heard more than it can ever have because of the absence of traffic. And there are the little miracles that maybe we rushed past when we were busy. And, there are like little moments that can strengthen us and sustain us, even though it's a difficult time. So it's important, I think, for all of us, especially at the end of every day, to reflect back on the day for the moment that strengthened us. So maybe before Pat sings a song for us, just before he does, we might just take one moment, just again to come into that moment of stillness, just a moment of stillness. And what helps us to come into stillness is to let the mind kind of fall still and relax. And just to become aware of the presence of God in you, the Spirit dwelling in you. Just let that consciousness arise. The Gospel, we're told that it's a spirit that the world, it doesn't even recognize it. But it lives deep within the heart. And in this time of uncertainty and unease, when we don't know what's happening next, just to relax that tendency to wanting to know, wanting to over-plan, over-worry, and just rest. And in the resting, to become aware of the blessings in your life. Become aware of all those little ways that God is showing love and peace to you. The smallest little moment.
So the song that we're going to finish with this morning, I first heard it about 20 years ago. And it became, the first line is, "Thank you for this precious day." And in itself, it's like a prayer. So I recorded it about 2 or 3 years ago. And so this morning we'll sing it. So thank you for this precious day.
Yeah, and thank you. It's lovely to be sharing with you on this precious day, sharing this reflection with all of you. And maybe just before Pat sings, you might like to connect with us sometime. We do a free weekly reflection called Sabbath Space, taking a break now for the summer, back mid-August, and it's a free resource every Sunday. And the email, if you wanted to email up to keep in contact with us about that or any future reflections, is
it's Patrick Sheehan 1960 at gmail.com. That's Patrick Sheehan 1960 at gmail.com.
And that's 2 E's in Sheehan, isn't it? S-H-E-E-H-A-N. Yeah. So, lovely to be connecting with you, and we'll close with Pat singing. Thank you.
Thank you for this precious day, these gifts you give to me. My heart so full of love for you sings praise for all I see. Oh, sing for every mother's love, for every childhood tear. Oh, sing for all the stars above, the peace beyond all fear. This is for the refugees, the ones without a home, a boat out on the ocean, a city street alone. Are they not some dear mother's child? Are they not you and I? Are we the ones to bear this shame and they the sacrifice? Or are they just like falling leaves who give themselves away? From dust to dust, from sea to sheer, and to another day. If I could have one wish on earth of all I can conceive, 'twould be to see another spring and bless the falling leaves. So thank you for this precious day, these gifts you give